Hello everyone, this is Mirko Guerrini and I welcome you to the Jazz Transcription Clinic, a monthly interviews podcast where we talk with accomplished jazz doctors about their lives, career and their personal secrets on the art of transcribing. If you want to improve at jazz, stay tuned and follow the Jazz Transcription Clinic on the socials for more content. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast is being recorded. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and the Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today. Hello everyone, welcome to the Jazz Transcription Clinic. We are back after a month rest where many things happened. I went back to Italy, I reconnected with a lot of friends, family of course, and a lot of great transcribers. And I also had the opportunity to play some gigs at the Umbria Jazz Festival in Perugia. And as you can see in this short video, I'm a guest with Funk Off, the incredible marching band playing almost every year, or I think every year in the last 20 years at Umbria Jazz. They are really great, energetic and great music. And it's funny, this video, because I'm soloing here with a black shirt, and this guy here, you can see with a red shirt, he's actually Claudio Giovagnoli, who is the first guest ever in the series of podcasts started 1 year ago. And on the right here, there is Dario Cecchini, who will be probably our next or within 2 months guest on the series of interviews for the podcast. So I can show you a little bit of the video that was made. If it starts, right. Super great vibe. All the people is dancing in the square. Really great. They all come from Vicchio, and they call themselves Funk Off, Funk Made in Vicchio. Vicchio is a little town next to where I used to live in Mugello Valley, between Florence and Bologna. Look at this fantastic rhythm section. Right, so that was a lot of fun on the Funk Off, but we have to keep going with our podcast, so I apologize for having left you in the dark for so long, but we are ready now to continue. And on this episode there is a new guest to the series, as a young fella, a great saxophone player, and he says very interesting things on the art of transcription. And then I will also start again with some new transcriptions that I make, and I will keep continuing with the series Practicing with Jazz Giants. So stay tuned and enjoy this show. Thank you. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Jazz Transcription Clinic podcast. Today is a special honor for me to guest a former student of mine, or I could also say we were mutual students, as I also learned a fair bit from this guy here. He's a young saxophone player, a young lion that I'm pretty sure you will hear his name for a long time in the jazz scene. His name is Oscar Bruten. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Mirko.
So Oscar has been, as I said, a student at the university where I teach, and after talking for a while, I didn't know, but he has a YouTube channel full of wonderful transcriptions, and I'm also a bit jealous because his transcriptions has a lot of views and he has a lot of subscribers, and in this days, that is what counts, isn't it? But I I must say that with transcriptions, if you get a lot of views, it means something. It means there is a good content, is a transcription that has some sort of value, and it is well done. Of course, not only transcriptions on Oscar's YouTube channel, but there are also some videos of him playing with his band or some videos of him playing the transcriptions. So you have to check it out because it's really great stuff on that channel. And I'm very happy to have this conversation today with him. So we had a chance to chat during classes, but I would like to our audience to listen to your points and your understanding of the art of transcription. So I might start with the first question, which is, why do you transcribe?
Well, it actually started when I was first learning jazz. I was learning off the Coltrane Omni book. Um, and then I would be listening to other records and I'd want to play along to the solos, but I couldn't find any sheet music for it anywhere. So I just started doing it myself to learn, I suppose.
And yeah, this is how you started, but can you elaborate a little bit why you keep doing it?
Um, well, I had a lesson with Dick Oates a few years ago who told me to learn the tradition of the music, and the more I learn about the people who came before me, the more it'll enhance my own playing. And so yeah, I've found that the best way that I can synthesize jazz language and sound authentic as an improviser, but also create my own sound, is to learn as much as I can about the people who came before me.
That's true. That's true. And also to escape the idea that you do something original when maybe there were few people before us that did it before.
Yeah.
If we don't listen to a variety of things, and especially our predecessors, we might fall into that mistake of thinking, oh, this thing is really new, and someone comes and say, sorry, this thing has been done in 1947.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so to me is also, of course, to understand the process and the development of this wonderful music style. And because improvisation is something that involves creativity at one of the biggest extents in music, so we need really to be careful and pay respect when we play also to our ancestors in terms of musicians. So what do you think you can bring home when you transcribe? What are you looking for, and what is the things that you want to put in your bag?
Um, well, it used to be just straight language, just copy and pasting lines, but I found what's more effective for me is sort of uh, trying to reverse engineer my favorite players, um, and my favorite things about them. So harmonic devices and where they might have gotten them, or maybe rhythmic devices and how it interacts with the band. So what I try and get out of it is ways I can develop my own playing in a similar way to the people I transcribe, but I try not to imitate through just copying.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think that's right. And also, you said something very quickly, but I want to spend a minute on it. You said harmonic devices, and it's all understandable, but also how they interact with the band. So this is a great point, Oscar, because sometimes we focus so much on a single player that we might forget that when we play, we interact with the others. Hopefully, we do it. And that's a big part that sometimes is missed, even in the academics or teachers. When you teach this specific style of music, it's always quite difficult to teach the interaction with the other instruments, because it goes with the assumption that you already know how to play any idea that you come up with or that you can hear played by another player in the band, and you can control your instrument to the level that you can take that idea on the moment and make something out of it. So that's also a really good point, that you look into why that line or that specific line has been played there. And sometimes it could be just a self-reference to what the player just played the moment before. But a lot of times you can hear that if you listen to carefully to the other members, maybe you can realize that that specific rhythm was played by the drummer, or the bass player a bar before. So you can understand that there is a listening component going on. And how do you study that? I'm curious to know, how can you just try to understand the interaction of the soloist?
Well, there's sort of two ways I think about it, on a micro and a macro level. So I'm really big into the highly orchestrated jazz as well as highly improvised. So just two examples off the top of my head would be Lester Young with the Count Basie Orchestra, and then Coltrane with his quartet in the 60s. So with Lester Young, it's not necessarily about responding to the rhythm section in the moment. It's more about developing a piece as an entity rather than a solo as its own thing. And so sort of that getting rid of the ego and learning how to fit your solo into the whole form of a song. So that would be the macro level of interacting with an arrangement. And then on the micro level with the Coltrane Quartet would be, there's lots of times when McCoy might be implying a 3/4 polyrhythm, and so Coltrane starts playing triplets, or the busier that Elvin gets, the busier that Coltrane gets. And so that would be the micro level of directly responding to the other musicians who are also improvising.
That's good. That's good. And that leads me to ask you, how important are the notes in a solo? And are you looking also at other things rather than the notes and the rhythm?
Yeah, well, the notes are important, but I think what's more important is the context that they're given in. So a certain note might mean something if it's in a different implied tonality by the soloist or the pianist or the arrangement. So what's more important to me is how that note fits in a melody, and how it works to create tension and resolution.
Yeah, that's good. And also, given that I know you're playing a beat, I can say that you also get a lot from the sound of the player that you transcribe, because I can hear that sometimes, or even, the mechanic of the saxophone, sometimes you play some lines, and I can understand that you use some specific fingerings because they help to get that specific sound. Again, not to be a copy, but because in that moment you like to use that sound. But having transcribed a player and forced you to try to get to that specific sound, maybe it's not even the way that line was played, but it works for you. It works for you to get the memory of that sound out. So yeah, I think also that it might be subconscious for you, but I've noticed that there is also a component of that in your playing that I believe it comes out from a very deep listening and the transcribing time that you spend. I have an interesting question that I'm very curious, because I don't think I've asked you in the past, is how do you choose the solos you want to transcribe? Because, for example, I noticed recently you publish a video of yourself playing a Herbie Hancock solo. And I also wanted to say you that even there, you are using some saxophone things.
Yes.
And so I might go back to this topic later, because I'm interested in understanding if it was just it came out. But I'll come back to it. Sorry. How do you choose the solos? Because there is quite a variety of different instruments on your channel that you transcribed.
Well, yeah, there's sort of two ways that I choose it. There's one which is sort of my jazz homework, if you will, which is getting really deep into the tradition of the music, going back to the 10s and 20s and 30s, which is the Lester Young transcriptions and the Louis Armstrong and the various swing ensembles and early jazz ensembles. So yeah, those ones I choose based on what I think sounds the best from that era and how I can understand that. And then on the other side is the people who I go out of my way to listen to, and who I've listened to for a very long time. So I don't know. I just choose on the day, I suppose.
That's absolutely fine. I mean, it's a question that every single guest has responded into a different way. Sometimes, people told me, well, I choose the solos, or I choose to transcribe a specific track as a job because I'm commissioned to do so. If I have to arrange like a song for a movie or for another show, and the director wants that specific song arranged for the band that we have, I have to transcribe it first. So it's like a paid job. So yeah, it's interesting. And so now I go back to that thing that I was elaborating before. I've noticed that when you play the Herbie Hancock solo, you use a couple of times, some specific saxophonistic things. Is that your attempt to sound like a piano, or to try to get the sense of the phrase and already transposing onto your instrument?
I would say probably 5% of it is me consciously trying to sound like a piano, and 95% is bad habits.
That's good. That's good. There's one issue I always had when I write a piece of music, an original composition. I always sit on the piano. I don't think I have ever written a piece on the saxophone. But this is just a habit that comes from the fact that I started as a pianist, and so the temptation of having a bass line, the harmony, and the melody, sounding together. But it happened many, many times that I'm pretty happy with the piece, and then I transpose it for saxophone. I go to a band rehearsal, I try the piece, and I'm not happy anymore because that specific melody and that piece was born on the piano. And sometimes transposing to the saxophone, it's bad. It doesn't work. So it needs some sort of treatment. And sometimes I had to give up, like not use the tune at all.
Yeah, right.
Or give it to a friend, to a pianist, and say, if you want, you can play in trio, but no horns. It doesn't sound. So yeah, thanks. I remember one of the main difficulties of piano transcriptions on the saxophone is that piano is very precise, and there's never an inflection in terms of the tuning, for example. There are many, many inflections from a sound point of view, from the timbre that the player is producing, but all the scoops, approach, notes, it can be only played as a grace note.
Yeah.
So that, to me, is one of the main obstacles, but it's good. It's good to try to play with a very, very firm tuning, no vibrato at all, because piano, as you know, doesn't have that luxury. And so we can learn a different way to play a phrase on the saxophone that it would be nice to have on our palette. Definitely. And by the way, for the listeners, you have to go and listen to that transcription because it's fantastic. You barely can hear the piano. Such Oscar is doing a great job in playing the transcription. And can I ask you, what methodology do you use when you transcribe? Do you use any software? Can you elaborate a little bit on the process from when you start to when you finish?
Yeah, generally I want to be able to sing solo top to bottom first because I want to have it internalized, and it also speeds up the whole transcription process. And then I'll try and play it on my horn before I write anything down. And then I'll either go to pen and paper. I've done that with Joe Henderson's Lush Live, which is hard to do on computer notation because it's a cadenza. But mostly I use Sibelius to write them down. And in terms of transcription software, I only use that when I'm transcribing large ensembles like a big band, because that way I can isolate sections if I'm finding it difficult to hear, maybe like trombone harmonies or something.
And what do you use? An EQ?
Yeah, I use EQ and panning, because occasionally with a lot of Ellington transcriptions, you'll have trumpets panned hard left, trombones panned hard right, and saxes in the middle. Yeah. But,
so if you
normally I just use my iTunes library for the other ones.
Yeah, so if you transcribe a solo from like a combo recording, you don't even slow it down.
Yeah, I find the more transcribing I do, the less I need to, because a lot of the double time lines and stuff I'll be able to sing with more accuracy, and sometimes I'll be able to recognize phrases that I've heard before. But I certainly used to use slow down apps and stuff.
This is very good that you mention, because one of the main obstacles that I notice young students have when we try to get them to transcribe is that they find it so hard that after a few attempts they feel so frustrated and discouraged to keep going. But you said the more I do and the less I need even to like listen to it 20 times. Maybe after 3-4 times you get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the reason is that the language is a sort of one history.
Yeah.
So the phrase that Bob Berg is playing in a, I don't know, 1985 album is still connected to the one that Ben Webster played,
Yeah.
50 years before. Maybe the sound is different, the conception of the phrase is different, but you can trace back. Because at the end of the day, we are still using the same 12 notes, and the concept of tonality and Western music system is the same for everyone. So that helps. But also, I've noticed that, for example, if I transcribe a lot of tenor players, I started not needing a tenor anymore.
Yeah.
Which I still need sometimes if I transcribe a different instrument, or at least I need a starting point, because I might be a bit wrong. If I transcribe a guitar solo, that note sounds like a F sharp, but I better check, because sometimes I'm still a bit wrong. I don't have perfect pitch.
No.
But I've noticed that, and specifically with tenor, because it's the instrument I transcribe the most, I sort of have a perfect pitch for tenor saxophone.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah.
So if you play a line, I can tell you the notes. But if you play it on a trumpet, I probably am right, but not 100%.
Yeah.
And yeah, so to me, I treat ears like muscles that can be trained and can be trained to a very good point. So my question is, you said you first learned to sing the solo, which is a great approach, but it can be very slow.
Yeah.
So does it take you long to learn to sing back?
It depends. Yeah, so if it's a solo that I've listened to for a very long time, like right now I'm working on Coltrane's transition solo, which is very intense and
Yep.
and difficult. But I've listened to that for very long, so I can sing through the entire solo, and it's not actually too difficult or slow to write it down. But if I'm transcribing, a track that I just heard, then it'll take extra time. But yeah, I don't know if I could do it without singing. Yeah.
No, that's good.
That's such an important part to the transcription process.
Yes, I'm a strong believer that if you can sing it, you can play it.
Yeah.
Because you have the memory of that sound. So, and it's in here, and all you have to do now, I sound a bit simple, but all you have to do is to transfer to your fingers and to. But I will probably make a video related to the transcription, because one exercise that I started doing a lot when I was probably your age, so we are talking about 250 years ago, was to start singing with the saxophone in my hands,
Yeah.
and singing the notes that I would produce if I played, which is something that we understand and we think it's normal now, but there are, I think I can say the majority of the students can't do that. So there is a disconnection between the fingering and the sound that we need to have, and we can create it, we can work on it.
Yeah.
I think it also goes with the fact that the saxophone, unfortunately, it's an easy instrument in terms of the mechanic. So for most of the notes, we have one key. So one finger is designed to one note only.
Yeah.
And that is a good thing, because you can learn, to play all the notes in, 2 weeks. But it's also a tricky one, because you can get trapped that this is F sharp and you have no idea on what F sharp sounds like. Right. So I started doing, even starting from scales, like do 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 dee, do 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 do.
Yeah.
And I did it for, hours and hours and hours. And then I started feeling that this note do was not anymore F sharp in my head, but started to be a sound.
Yeah.
So have you done any work like that?
Not consciously, but I'm at a point now where I'd be able to sing everything that I want to play, just because I think that just comes naturally with listening a lot and transcribing a lot.
Yeah, and also to me, it goes with the fact that I always been jealous about trumpets and trombones, because they have to sing in their head.
Yeah.
And generally, if you think of trumpet players, their lines are always singable. Even a Clifford Brown line on Cherokee,
Yeah.
it's more singable than a Johnny Griffin line.
Yeah, that's been the main benefit, I think, about because I transcribe a lot of trumpet players. I always gravitate towards their sense of melody.
Yeah.
Because, well, as you said before, the saxophone is technically it's a very logical instrument,
And it's a very digital
you can-
in terms of digit.
Yeah, so you can get away with, fluffing around changes but I always find that trumpet players play with a lot more clarity and melody. Because they have to.
They have to, because they have to pick the right notes in a bunch of 5 or 6 possibilities.
Yeah.
So you have to know what sound you are looking for. While for a saxophone player, it really can be only theory. I think D major and I just play an arpeggio, but I don't know how it sounds. But I know how to play, because I know the notes and I know what fingers produce. It's a little bit the same problem that pianists have, with a step further in the trickiness of it, because the pianist also can see the keyboard, which we don't.
Yeah.
At least we don't. We feel under our fingers, but a pianist also see, and that's so tricky, because you also have a visual memory of like a voicing on the left hand, which can be helpful, but I think one of the risks for pianists is that they tend to reproduce the same thing that they know from a visual point of view.
Yeah.
And start to forget the sound point of view. That's good. So you already responded to the next question if you write it down. So I think we can move on. And this is going to be interesting. How do you practice the solos?
Well, generally by the time that I've finished the transcription, I'll already have it under my fingers. It's just a matter of technical execution. So while I'm transcribing, because I'm singing it and playing it, I know it by memory, and I probably know it. I can sing it by memory, and I can probably play it by memory. The main thing for me about practicing transcription is the nuance of their sound and inflection, things like dynamics and phrasing and articulation. And that just comes from listening to it a lot, trying to imitate what they're doing with my voice very poorly because I'm not a good singer. and then just basically playing it a lot.
Yeah. So the next question is how, and this is also a question that I received from one of the listeners of the podcast.
Yep.
How do you incorporate the ideas that you find in your transcriptions? How do you incorporate them into your playing?
Yeah, well, as I sort of alluded to before, I try and avoid cutting and pasting language. I always analyze my transcriptions and figure out, at least try and figure out what the player was thinking. And then I'll create my own exercises. Like I've got this video on my YouTube channel, which actually goes through my process. It's a Louis Armstrong transcription.
Okay.
And I try and figure out the melodic devices, rhythmic devices, and harmonic devices that they use. And so, for example, maybe with Louis Armstrong, he uses a lot of the time he uses a minor 4 chord instead of a dominant chord. And so I'll play a standard that I like, and anytime that there's a 5 dominant going to a 1, I'll play the 4 minor going to the 1 instead. Or maybe it's melodic development, so I'll spend a chorus on just one idea and try and develop that throughout the whole chorus. Yeah.
I remember, I started doing something similar when I realized I transcribed some Dexter Gordon solos. I can't remember which one it was. And he loved to trick the listener's ears and play with the listener's expectations, which is a concept that I always thought it was so brilliant. And I started using also sometimes in my composition. I like to lead the ear somewhere, because we all perceive music in the same way if we grew up in a Western country, right? So we all hear the cadenza, the cadence process, the resolution process, the tension and the secondary dominance, etc., etc. Yeah. So learning from Dexter, who in a minor key, for example, on the dominant chord likes to play major 9th and major 13.
Yeah.
Right? That's a great trick. Or on the opposite, in a major key, he loves to play flat 9, flat 13. So that way you announce the mode, but then the mode comes and it's the other one.
Yeah, it's like a mini tierce duplicity.
Yeah, and I thought it was really brilliant. And so I started doing the same exercise that you did. I took any standard on a major key and start playing altered chords and, leading into a minor key, even from the secondary dominant. So play half diminished on the 2 chord and then dominant flat 9, flat 13. just to have that thrill, of announcing, yes, we are going to a very sad and minor key, and then a sun ray hits the music with a major resolution, and those sort of things always got me, and I try to then instead of, as you said, just play the phrases that Dexter played, I try to develop that concept. And of course, other stuff like, if you transcribe Dexter, you know that there is a specific Dexter thing on the timing.
Yeah.
So I will be very, very interested in try to understand that and try to replicate that. Not because I want to use it, but because I want to have it in my bag, available as a caller. So, yep.
I think what you brought up as well is one of the biggest things I've gotten out of learning people's devices rather than their language as well, is that you can express emotions much more effectively. Like if you're alluding to a minor resolution and then play the major third, that you can apply that to so many different situations, more so than if you were to just play a line straight out of another person's solo.
Yes, absolutely right. Even because when we play, we are not just playing, we are telling something to the listener, and so we need to be aware that that specific line or that specific way to play triggers some feelings, some emotions, and we have to be aware of that. And then of course everyone will be inclined to play its own personality. So the one that is depressed will play depressed music, which is not necessarily is a bad thing. It's just a very sincere and genuine outcome that comes out in your playing. And that also reminds me that probably I already said it in a previous show, but my first jazz teacher asked me to spend like 3 months on Lester Young vibrato.
Yeah.
And he was quite strict. I was seeing him once a month because he was living in Rome and I had to travel. And I was young, moneyless. But every time I tried, the same solo, and every time he said, no, vibrato is not yet what he's doing. But rather than teaching me how to reproduce that vibrato, I think his point and the lesson was that those are the important things. Forget about the fact that he's playing D.
Yeah.
But the sound that you hear, so the timbre, the tonguing, the air stream, the angle of the air, tooth placement, all the things that are involved on the sound production on a saxophone, and of course vibrato. Vibrato is a big component, and sometimes we don't even think we use vibrato as an automatic tool, but we need to be aware that has a great impact.
Yeah, 100%.
On what you play. So I think the point of that teacher was those are the things we need to focus on when we transcribe, because those define your playing. It's not the note. You can play, a simple diatonic line or a very chromatic and out line, but in the end, it will be how you play those notes that will define you as a musician. That's good. And I I have a this question that is a bit embarrassing, because after talking about very high concepts, I need to come down to the ground and ask you one of those idiotic questions that sometimes even music journalists ask to us, like, what is your favorite solo that you transcribed?
Oh wow. Um,
I know that you can't say just one, but let me force you to pick.
I think if there was one solo that I've learnt the most from, um, in terms of different uh, fingerings and techniques on the saxophone and harmonic devices and rhythmic devices and interaction would be Lester Young's solo on Shoeshine Boy. I think there's a great deal of wisdom and influence in that solo. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. So I'm probably going to put a link in the podcast description of that solo, so you can hear what Oscar is talking about. And what do you think in terms of like revelation? Also, do you have any solo that where you had a eureka moment?
Um. Uh, hmm. There's this Wynton Marsalis solo on Embraceable You, um, where it's really beautiful. It's a ballad and it's very exposed. And that taught me a lot. That taught me first of all about diminished substitutions and using the diminished scale as a harmonic device. Um, but also um, using 12/8 as a means of playing rather than 4/4. So basing things on triplets. And then finally about um, just this sort of brilliance of just exposed melodies, no lines or anything, just a beautiful melody. Um, yeah, I think that's a really beautiful song. I always come back to that one if I'm feeling
I mean,
lost.
Winton, when he plays, he's so great, on his instrument. He can really do everything. But I also have an album. His like Standard Time Volume, I think 2, and it's
I
with
think this Embraceable You solo is on Standard Time
with
too.
an orchestra.
Oh, Standards and Ballads. I think Hot House Flowers. That's that one. Hot House Flowers is the one with Stardust on it.
Okay, now I'm talking about a different recording I have,
Okay.
which is with an orchestra,
Yep.
and it's mainly ballads, and
Yeah.
it's incredible how he plays. Even he doesn't do much soloing.
No,
Is
I really respect that. Yeah.
mainly playing the melodies and adding here and there some transitions into the next beat. But the way he delivers the melody it's like a singer, like a very experienced singer. He's getting you inside. He moves things
Yeah.
inside you. Yeah, I know. And Oscar, I have the last question for you. Who is, in your opinion, who did you find very hard? So, in your experience as a transcriber, the most difficult one to transcribe?
The most difficult to transcribe.
Yeah.
Um, well, it's actually not a player, it's a writer. It's Duke Ellington. I've I'm really interested in his music. I love it. But it's very dense. there's this song I recently transcribed that has 4 or 5 independently moving voices in the saxophone section. But yeah, it's a great challenge, and I think I've learned a lot from Ellington.
That's good. That's good. We all had the same grandpa. That's good, Oscar. So thanks for your time. It has been a real pleasure to guest you here, and I will put Oscar's website and YouTube channel in the podcast description. You can find a lot of resources. You can also purchase his transcriptions on his website. So if you are keen to explore a little bit Oscar's works, and he has a new album coming out soon called Reverence, and it will be available on all platforms. So I strongly encourage everyone who is listening to check Oscar's music out, because, as I said at the beginning, we will hear him playing for a long time, and we are very grateful to have you in the scene. So thanks for your time, and I'll see you soon, hopefully.
Definitely.
Bye.